Welcome everyone to the pyreSwap show. And can I get some sort of feedback that our audio is working on all platforms? Do you have an audio check over here locally? And audio on Discord is good? Live and clear? Okay. On Twitter, how's Twitter audio? And thanks to everybody following us on Twitter right now and watching on Twitter. Okay, fantastic. All right, so today there is a couple stuff to announce, kind of maybe to pre-announce it. The charts do appear like they are in fact behaving like they ought to at this period of flatness. However, we're still going to go from 1% to 0.7% daily. So we are going to implement that sometime in the next 48 hours, and we will be making an announcement about that. Does that make sense, everybody? No video feed. Okay, no video feed on Discord. What about on Discord?
Discord, oh yeah, I didn't do it on Discord yet, sorry.
Got it, okay, no worries. Not on X? Okay, we have video everywhere now. Thank you for that audio check. Not the whiteboard today. The whiteboard, always the whiteboard. Always the whiteboard. Okay, we're good on Twitter. We're good on Discord. We're good everywhere else. Fantastic. Welcome again to the pyreSwap show, sponsored by Pocket. Okay, so for those of you who aren't aware, we have been tapering emissions to the point of making inflation less than deflation. Does that make sense? The entire point of this is to get the chart flat and uptrendable, uptickable, right? One of the reasons for doing this is that we can make the coins look like they're going to go up a lot in value before they hit their meeting lines, their meeting thresholds, which effectively becomes kind of like where they would see resistance, especially if they were beneath a certain size. Does that make sense? Generally speaking, a chart with volatility is what the DeFi user has preference for. So does that make sense that we're going to go from a 1% to a 0.7% daily, all three tokens? I am fairly confident this is where we can halt it because I'm already seeing indications that the charts now are fighting to flatten. Does that make sense, everybody? And do you guys know what I'm talking about? Like, can you guys see these trends yourselves? Ish? Okay, yeah, so there is more and more green, what do you even call this? There is more and more, I guess you could say, like elastic, what do you even call it? There's more like green reactivity. Does that make sense? Yeah, but we're not talking about those tokens. Yeah. 2 and 3 ohm being a parity, yeah. But those being a parity doesn't really do anything for themselves climbing up. They need pyrePhantom to climb up in order to provide resistance for them. 2 ohm and 3 ohm, the only resistance and support they provide for each other involves where pyrePhantom is. So if pyrePhantom, if 2 ohm was at like 0.08 TWAP and 3 ohm was at like 0.12 TWAP, and then pyrePhantom went to like 0.09 TWAP, 2 ohm would be profitably meter-chargeable. Does that make sense? Like there is now profit to mead 2 ohm and sell it back for 2 ohm. Does that make sense? Mead pyrePhantom, sell it back for 2 ohm. Mead pyrePhantom, sell it back for 2 ohm that you started with, right? This pulls pyrePhantom down and it raises 2 ohm up. So effectively 2 ohm has the ability to affect pyrePhantom, and pyrePhantom has the ability to affect the line of support for 3 ohm and Z ohm, right? And Z ohm could be up here at like 0.18, as it were. Right? Make sense, everybody? Okay, but regardless, wherever pyrePhantom ends up being, based on how the other tokens interact with it, that's going to be the line of support for all 3 tokens. And I mean that in generally post-Genesis. Right now, it's a little bit hard to see, but I guess it doesn't matter. We're going to talk a little bit more about a channel we're opening up. This channel, I think we're calling it Theurgy. And this is going to be a channel in the Discord specifically to mentor and tutor and train newbies. Does that make sense to you guys? And specifically, it's kind of a channeler duty. Rather, it's a not so much a channeler duty as much as it is a benefit to being a channeler. Because I want you guys to understand how the game changes based on individualism versus tribalism when it comes to playing the IWV. If a witch is playing the IWV like by themselves and for themselves, there is very little incentive to teach new players how to play the game correctly for this person. Does that make sense to you guys? Because a new player, all they could do is effectively dilute their total yield. Does that make sense? Like if somebody is just trying to maximize the amount of money they can make right there in that moment, it doesn't make any sense to train or mentor a newbie. Do you guys understand? Right? Like it is a misaligned incentive. Follow me? Yes? No? I really have no idea whether people can follow me or not. But okay, fantastic. However, if channelers are trying to organize the coven, there is now an incentive for the coven to actually be welcoming to newcomers. Does that make sense to you guys? Because the channelers aren't playing the game directly for the maximization of their own bags. Rather, what are they playing the game for? They are playing the game for the confidence of the rest of the user base, for the rest of the witches. Does that make sense? So it's not just about like, okay, how can I maximize the amount of incants that I can claim per epoch? Rather, it becomes, how can I maximize the amount of people who trust my strategies? Does that make sense? So the more people that the channelers in Coven can in fact train, does that make sense? They are building a relationship of leadership to new players. Do you guys understand what I'm saying here? Like, so those people, after they're trained by them, they will continue to listen to them. Does that make sense? And it becomes a numbers game as far as, like, community control of the witch faults. Do you guys get it? Z's in the chat. You know, Sunday is hit and miss. We either have, like, a huge crowd or we have nobody at all. I have no idea. It seems like everything else is overall doing fine. By the way, guys, if you have not set up our subreddit yet, if you can go to r/pyreSwap, believe it or not, we have it set up, especially after we get 50 people. So if you can go to r/pyreSwap and what is it? Subscribe. What do you say to it? When you do a subreddit, what is it? Subscribe? Sub. Okay, you subscribe to the subreddit. Once we hit 50 people, we're at like 33 right now, I think, or 32. Once we have 50 of them. Oh, somebody's just. Okay. Yeah, if you go to just r/pyreSwap, once we have 50 people, we can have it automated where every single one of these streams becomes a post automatically in the subreddit. So the subreddit itself would have an automatic feed of new content. Do you guys get what I'm saying? And also the subreddit would then become a great place to review the old streams. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? So if you guys could subscribe to r/pyreSwap so we can increase the total amount of subs above 50, then we'll just have that going all the time. Everybody get it? Yes? Okay, fantastic. Anyways, I was hoping I could beat the drum of the way that the channeler game changes more, but at least if you guys all understand it, that's what we're going to do. So anybody I think can contribute to theurgy or whatever. Well, yeah, for sure, ZeroKex. Right now, there isn't really a knight faction. Does that make sense? Like, there isn't really a knight faction. So it's easy for people to learn the witch game at multiple levels. But we're going to spin up that channel, and it will be like, it will be the go-to spot for like newbie question and answers. Does that make sense? A Q&A chat for understanding the witch game and its intricacies. But it's from there that the channelers and other people can in fact mentor newbies if they understand the advantage that, okay, now we do in fact want to mentor new people just for the sake of building up our own faction. Do you guys all understand that? The channelers having more and more people on their side also helps them, it helps them get good at their job, let's be honest. Them getting good at their job is critical for the whole aspect of this being a decentralized credit union. Do you guys get it? Okay, fantastic. Yeah, I don't know what to talk about, yeah. Let's see, we have new stickers up. Yeah, so we have new stickers up and we're getting them distributed far and wide. I think these stickers will naturally convert at a higher rate. I'll say this, if you guys haven't seen this marketing funnel that I've drawn before, something like this. You have awareness. You have consideration. You have purchase. You have retention. And you have advocacy. Right? So, yeah, thank you. Thank you that everyone is so bullish. So, in order for us to really have our marketing funnel working really, really effective, I want you guys to understand we've been building it strongest from this direction and then up into this direction, right? So, like, again, advocacy and retention, these are things that the pyreSwap show helps with in general. Does that make sense? Do you guys get it? Like, once a person gets to the point of being an advocate, they don't really stop being an advocate. Do you guys get what I'm saying? So the fact of the matter is, like, in order to make the rest of this stuff work, right, we effectively need to figure out the way that people up here, the unaware, how can they, like, get to here? Does that make sense? So our consideration level of the funnel, this involves the Discord chat feeling bullish with just its signs of life. It involves the Twitter being bullish. Yeah. It involves the Twitter being bullish looking just from it constantly having new content and new activity and whatever have you. And then the fact of the matter is that we're going to deflate into an uptrend, which will make the chart look bullish. Does that make sense to you guys? Like, we're looking to fulfill all these superficial indicators that somebody would say yes to it. Does that make sense? Like the most basic superficial indicators that determines whether somebody likes a product or not. Most people. Does that make sense? So in order to bring people into the consideration stage, so consideration is almost done. The charts right now are flat-ish, right? I think Phantom is like a little bit up, and I think Pirate EVX was flat. They're getting closer and closer to being flat, but the fact of the matter is we're going to taper inflation down a little bit more. to make us into a clearer uptrend. And yeah, exactly, Jeff. Yeah, exactly. We're preloading the bottom of the funnel. So when people gain awareness, all of the things that they do in their consideration stage, we're going to check those boxes. Does that make sense to you guys? And this is all being timed arguably pretty well. We are in fact orchestrating this pretty smoothly. We're going to have a not something I need to describe like publicly, but we're going to have a as of tomorrow we will have like a process for awareness generation using subreddits. And just based on the way our project looks, it's very likely that our ideal user base is heavily on subreddits. So all of these 4 things are going to be like aligned to the point that when we start raising awareness, people will actually fall through. Does that make sense? Like when we raise awareness, people will actually like continue down the funnel. Do you guys get what I'm saying? I was explaining this before because we had a development meeting every Sunday. And I was explaining this to them that if we wanted this project to look like extremely bullish, what would you need to see in the Discord? And I said, if you saw 5 new people every day writing GM in the chat, does that make sense? Like 5 people that weren't there before, but they continue to get into the habit of adopting the GM habit. Does that make sense? Because what they're going to do is like, by the first week, people would be GMing each other to the tune of like 50 or 60 responses each. Does that make sense? Like you'd be getting GM from everybody. And like that level of community like already feels like there's a huge crowd of people engaging with each other. Does that make sense? So we're already seeing like a quarter of that maybe. Does that make sense? But if you had 5 new people every day, you would have like a runaway stampede of adoption and immersion. Does that make sense? And it's not like, oh, you're going to have, when we say 5 people writing GM, naturally, in your awareness funnel, let's say we have a subreddit campaign going, and let's say we get like 3 people off that post that'll at least read the docs, or they'll come to the website, or they'll click through the website once. Then from that group, you have a certain fraction that'll actually join the Discord, right? And then from that'll actually join the Discord, you'll have ones that actually engage in the Discord and start getting in the habit of writing GM to each other. Does that make sense to you guys? Again, people who become aware, right? People who become engaged, or people who become interested, I guess. Yeah. People who become like engaged, right? Or even how the fuck would I write this? People become aware, people become interested, people who become I guess engaged, yeah. Probably just engaged and consistent, to be honest. Does that make sense? Like, yeah, I would say, yeah, not even excited, yeah, because like the excitement will kind of happen almost as if it's by accident. Does that make sense? Like, how do I describe it? If you, okay, think of it this, ZeroX. Imagine if you were seeing a bar, right? Like imagine a bar or a pub. I guess you live in the UK, right? So a pub. Imagine a pub on a Friday or Saturday evening or afternoon, and maybe like earlier in the day, it's like empty. Does that make sense? Yeah, so literally like just from filling the pub, people will become excited on their own. Does that make sense? But again, first they have to become aware, then they become interested, then they become engaged, and then they don't leave. Does that make sense? There's a better pub in the UK. It's called like the 3/4 to 5/16 bushing. You know what I'm talking about? Well, yeah, Jeff, I had zero doubt in you, sir. There's a hilarious pub name, which is, yeah. But yeah, anyways, you guys get it? So like the fact of the matter is like it's not like they need to be engaged or even excited, but rather like they become aware of the bar, they become interested in the bar, they actually like go into the bar and then they stay in the bar. Does that make sense? I think it's great that we always have an ability to turn this into an allegory. Does that make sense? Right? And enough people are staying in the bar, right? And if enough people are staying in the bar, that helps more people become aware of the bar, more people become interested in the bar, more people become engaged in the bar. Does Does that make sense? Like, so every night in the drinking part of town in every city across the, I guess, the Western world, you're having this exact same funnel. Do you guys get what I'm saying? Right? It's like the bar is empty and then it suddenly gets packed. Right? I imagine the curves would be very, very interesting if you were watching like the rate of customer acquisition. Yeah, zero clicks, exactly. Like at a certain point, they're now a regular at that bar. Do you get what I'm saying? Yeah, now you're a regular. So like not even like losing track of time, how long you've been there, but you'll come back the next weekend. If you come back the next weekend, you don't need there to be a crowd. Like you're more comfortable just coming in when the bar's just opening. You can start drinking at fucking 3 o'clock in the afternoon if you want. Right? Right, Jeff? Yeah, you get what I'm saying. So the point of it is we already have like the bottom parts of the funnel extremely strong. So as our consideration checks, right? So people are like looking, if they're wandering around the street looking for a bar, they're doing their own superficial checks about what they want to do. Can they hear the music and do they like the music, right? Can they see the people and do they like the people? Can they see the drinks and do they like the drinks, right? Can they see the seating and do they like the seating? Does that make sense? Like they're just doing these superficial street checks about whether or not they want to enter. Do you guys get it? That Jeff guy is nice. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Exactly. But do you guys get what I'm saying? Like, so like their superficial checks are getting met. That gets them into the door. Everybody follow me? Allegorically? I should probably turn this into a system. Aware, interested, engaged, consistent. Fantastic. Anyways, yeah, that's the exact same concept. So like, as opposed to like getting them excited, they just need to be there over a long enough period of time, and then as soon as the crowd feels big enough, the excitement will show up. Does that make sense? So we just need to get a high enough people consistent and let excitement handle itself. Yeah. Everybody follow me? Yeah. Thanks to everybody who showed up yesterday for the Yabonk show. That was cool. Maybe we'll do that again. I have no idea what his schedule's like. But it was at least fun to just do that. Yeah. Yeah, everybody DM Yabonks and say thanks. Everybody do that. Yep. Especially the feet pics lady. Yep. Fantastic. All right. I feel like I should have had more to answer here, but like, do you guys understand that through the creation of the channelers and the coven, at least that concept, that like the value in teaching the game to somebody else now exists? And maybe you don't understand this, but the channelers understand this. Does that make sense? Do you guys get that? Because like now it's like, it is a new beginning, 100%. And I want you guys to understand something. Like, the channeler is a banker role. Does that make sense? This is, in fact, one of the banker roles. And when you think like a banker, I want you guys to understand, you're not wrong. It is really fun. When you're a banker, you don't really think about who owns what. Does that make sense? Everything is loaned, everything is borrowed. In the world of banking. Do you guys understand this? Like, everything is loaned, everything is borrowed. Do you guys understand? Like, everything is debt, everything is owed, right? Like, nobody owns anything. It's always like, who has it for what period of time? Do you guys understand this? So the fact of the matter is that when you're a channeler, it's like the trust that the user base will place in you over time is how that benefits you financially. Does that make sense? Because if you have the ability to ask more people to just match your fucking match your strategy, does that make sense? Like, understand that a channeler being able to command this, right? A channeler who has, you know, one channeler with like 5 thaumaturges, by the way, versus like one channeler with 50. Right? Do you guys get it? Like the amount, first of all, if you have 50 people that are willing to play like according to your playbook, like you run the fucking witchfall. Does that make sense? Like it doesn't matter how much people are dissenting or complaining, like your army is going to win that round. Does that make sense? Because you just have more people playing on your team. Do you guys get what I'm saying? So like your ability to outnumber the non-compliant is what allows them to control the incantation. I think like none of them are here right now. Yeah, but well, that's fine. But do you guys get it? Yeah, it's a banker roll. So they're like, it's not that like the actual thaumaturges don't send money to the channelers. Do you guys get what I'm saying? Like there's no like actual transaction or payment taking place there. But rather like them just knowing that they're going to match their fucking strategy, like that's, well, you know what? I guess this must be the Sabbath for them. I don't know. But you guys get what I'm saying. Like them just having this amount of people that'll match their strategy, like that will work out for them financially one way or another. Do you guys get what I'm saying? Because later on, there's more and more things that teamwork and factions are involved with when it comes to the GPSE, and building the teams and the factions now helps them get stronger. If that makes sense to you guys. Right, so this is another example, by the way, that, you know, I remember it was a certain Tomb Fork dev, and I was explaining to him what terminal utility was, and he's like, but bro, everybody is in here to make money. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's correct, but like, you don't have to make money the same way. And I guess they didn't understand what the fuck I was saying, but there are other things that you might not think of as money, but are actually money. And you can diversify and variegate this enough where you can build an entire economy out of financial instruments. I know this is not understood well, but... Well, CJ, that's exactly the point. Yeah, it's exactly the point. And by the way, I'll talk about that a little bit. So, I was talking about this earlier, and you've heard projects be like, hey, that project has a great community. Do you guys understand this? Who here has heard this about any project? Whether it was an NFT project or whether it was a meme coin? Who here has heard this described? Who here has heard this phrase describing a project in Web3? Fantastic. Yeah, I should hope so. They make this, by the way. This is one of the most superficial checks, and that's also why we invest so heavily in the Discord here. Does that make sense? So the fact of the matter is, though, I want you guys to understand something about community. If a community doesn't support each other or help each other solve their problems, that community will dissolve, right? You guys see that on the screen there? Mostly? Okay. Do you guys understand this? Like at the end of the day, like, yo, zero kex, 100%, yeah. Yeah, and CJ, you're right. It is a buzzword, and you're right. Intention is not result. Yeah, everything you guys you understand exactly what I'm getting at. If the people that are holding a token, like let's say it's a meme token, like what are they gonna do to help each other solve their problems to the point of like staying cohesive as a unit? Like what are they actually gonna do with each other? So when we talk about like communities that actually get built, you can think of like church communities, you can think of like cultural communities, you You can think of like work communities. You can think of like hobbyist communities. Does that make sense to you guys? Right? Right? Like a Bible study is a community that consists because everybody like learns from the fucking Bible. Or if people have a hobby of playing volleyball, as long as they get a chance to play volleyball, they'll have a little volleyball league as a community. Does that make sense to you guys? I remember I was at I trained Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu not that long ago, somewhat long ago, and literally like the entire gym also would go watch the fights together, right? Like they would go watch the fights at the bar, effectively, right? Like UFC fights. Do you guys get what I'm saying? So like literally, like it's just because you know that the people that you're training with are also able to discuss the fight with you. Does that make sense? So it's like you have one hobby that turns into another hobby, right? So but the fact of the matter is though, even though these fighters end up fighting each other, right? You end up literally sparring with these same people. Like it's still all for sport. Does that make sense? So the fact of the matter is, in the GPSE, in the pyreSwap, we have these factions for the point of creating communities that can be cohesive. But the way that we make these communities cohesive is we don't put everybody in the same community. Does that make sense? Which is why we have 4 fucking Discord servers. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? Like we're not trying to put everybody in the same chat. We are in fact trying to give people the ability that they have some allies and some enemies. Do you guys understand? Because there is a nature of markets that is in fact PvP, and all you have to do is get to the point where you don't feel like it's every man for themselves in this PvP. Does that make sense? Like if you're a smaller player and you're in a PvP environment, you would feel a lot better if you had a team. Does that make sense? Right? Yeah. So effectively, the channelers and the fucking witches and the coven, they help each other solve their fucking problems, right? It's not ideal. It's not the ideal, but rather it's the optimal in the sense that everybody can win somewhat. Does that make sense? Oh, welcome, Why So Cynical. I didn't even watch. Oh yeah, I mean maybe the channelers are doing something else. I have no idea. That might be why the channelers aren't in the chat right now. So the point being is that the community aspect of the GPSC is heavily involved in the design. Does that make sense? Like, if you were, like, I don't know how to describe it. If you were trying to put together like a football league, like a PAL league, not all of the players in that league can be on the same team. The fact that they're on different teams is what allows the league to exist. Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah, exactly, CJ. Exactly. It would be a shit league. Yeah, 100%. Like, what's the point? And CJ, believe it or not, that is how community, when used as a buzzword, most of the time is implemented in Web3. Does that make sense? And I can explain again. Who here knows Fide's Vegetable Village? Right? Who here knows about this? Well, Joel I encourage you to maybe learn about the channelers. Yeah, I encourage you guys to learn about the channelers because the problem you're having there is in fact solved through the channelers. Okay, so I want you guys to understand something. If CJ and Dr. Mac and Why So Cynical, if CJ and Dr. Mac and Why So Cynical, who I'm going to abbreviate as WSC, if they were all vegetable farmers and they all lived in the same valley, if they all grew broccoli, if they were all broccoli farmers, they would never trade with each other. Does that make sense? Because they're all in the same business. In fact, they are in fact competitors to each other. Do you guys understand this? Okay. Now, in order, not only would they not trade with each other, they would believe that their broccoli is the best. Does that make sense? Like Dr. Mac would believe his broccoli is the best because he does stuff that CJ doesn't do. And CJ would believe his stuff is the best because he does stuff that Dr. Mac doesn't do. And Why So Cynical would believe his broccoli is the best because it's the biggest. I don't fucking know, right? Well, CJ, that is the goal there. The variegation. Does that make sense? So the fact of the matter is, though, CJ, they might not necessarily still trade with you unless you change what you're growing. So if CJ now starts becoming a carrot farmer, CJ now grows carrots. Does that make sense? Guess what CJ can now do? CJ can now trade his carrots for the broccoli of Dr. Mac or Why So Cynical. Does that make sense? And literally, we have now created a market because there is now a reason to exchange between the actors. If you wanted to create even more economic variety to this fucking vegetable village, Dr. Mac could now grow asparagus. Does that make sense? So now, CJ can trade carrots for Dr. Mac's asparagus. Doc can trade asparagus for broccoli. Why So Cynical can trade broccoli for carrots or asparagus. Do you guys understand this? The point being though, is that if they're not, the reason that they're able to effectively become useful to each other is because they're not stepping on each other's toes, even though they are arguably they're all providing vegetables. Does that make sense? Like they still variegate, they still diversify their specialty, where they can still help each other out, yes, and the value of choice, exactly, Zerokex. That is also why you have economic growth in the derivative, in the exponential. Because not only now, if a fourth person moves into this village, right, what's the value of Zerokex joining the village now, right? Zerokex could have joined. He could have joined a village where they only have broccoli, but now he can joins a village where they have all three things. So Zerokex can be a fucking shepherd. Does that make sense? And now as a shepherd, he can provide meat and dairy and wool. And bones, I guess, too. Do you guys get what I'm saying? So now, if Zerokex is a fucking shepherd, you now have an exponential amount of new trading relationships that now exist. Because before here you had here you had 3, but among 4 you have 6. Does that make sense? Because among 3, I'll describe it like this. You have 1, 2, and 3 connections, right? But among 4, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5, and then 6. Does that make sense? So literally from adding a 4th role, you're increasing the economic variety and diversity of the entire village by an exponential amount. Does that make sense? This is right here. Do you guys understand that literally, like, at first you only had 3 among 3, but you added a 4th person, now it's doubled? You went from 3 to 6 from adding 1. Do you guys understand this? Four to 7. Yes, exactly, CJ. Yeah. Oh, well, yeah, indeed. I'm thinking not so much about the option of the choice, but rather that, like, what you can possibly trade for. So I'm actually just thinking of the choices. Does that make sense? Yeah, because again, not any, these are actually 4 different vendors, whereas in the ice cream truck example, it's 1 vendor with more than 1 option. But again, Dr. Mac could start growing asparagus and cauliflower. You guys get what I'm saying? So like if Dr. Mac adds cauliflower to his fucking thing, then you have even more in the exact example, in the exact thinking that Zero Kex is describing there, right? So if Zero Kex is a shepherd, but he's also a fucking blacksmith or whatever, I don't fucking know. But you guys get the idea, right? So the point being is that how do you keep the community cohesive in the GPSC? It's like, well, first of all, allow people to be in like variegated positions. Does that make sense? Because if they're in variegated positions, this means that red candles can't kill the project. Do you guys get what I'm saying? Because a red candle might be bad for one actor. In order to make it good for another actor and arguably reverse that red candle, you have to have that actor that's willing to buy at that price. Do you guys understand? Okay. Well, CJ, that's also correct as far as like getting your emotion out of it. Yeah. Yeah. One of the ways of just getting, like, making charts less emotional is learning how to adjust the view of them all over the place. Does that make sense? I'll show you guys on Deck Screener right now, actually. Hang on. The Bank and Sam. So if we go and look at like pyrePhantom, and I like that Deck Screener's business model is only becoming more and more degen, for lack of a way to describe him. Okay, so guys, right now, look at pyrePhantom's chart. Do you guys see it? Wow, it's a reversal. It's a reversal. It's a reversal, but maybe it's not. Okay, I want you guys to be honest. Maybe it's not. Let's take it down to the 5-minute mark, and let's now zoom out a little bit. Oh, okay. Well, maybe this was a reversal too, right? Do you guys see it right here? Maybe this is a reversal too. Do you guys see it? That was only like a few days ago, maybe a week ago, right? 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 You can't really tell yet, and then it's like, oh, well, I don't know what this chart looks like. Are we actually in an uptrend yet, or are we just kind of bouncing around? Right? Do you guys see that? You can also change based on whether or not you're looking at Phantom or the dollar, right? When you look against Phantom, it actually looks a little bit flatter. Do you guys see that? Do you guys see it's a little bit more flat compared to Phantom? By the way, we do compare everything to the gas coin here. Like, it doesn't make sense to compare to the dollar. It's always misleading. So if you ever feel bad about like how these things look, granted, I know we're like at all-time low right now, but again, always adjust to comparing against the fucking the gas coin numeraire, not the dollar. But again, if we're doing this and we zoom out, it's like, oh, I can't really, okay, right here, it's like I can't tell if we're flattening. Does that make sense? It's hard to tell if we're flattening. It's like, okay, well, maybe if you zoom out a little bit more, okay, maybe we look like we're flattening now here. Granted, over here, this is like an upset. This is like a it's hard to fucking explain. But here you can see that, oh wait, maybe we were definitely happening steeper here, right? If you're comparing the price here, let's say it was like, if you're comparing like this price, let me draw a line. If you're comparing this to this, that's still definitely steeper than like this, to this. Do you guys see that? Like, we definitely have gotten flatter since then, right? Even if you kind of like mitigate all the noise. Yeah. Like, that's the whole point. And generally speaking, I want you guys to understand that like this Deck Screener business model deliberately puts the numbers in a way to prey on your emotions. Just being honest. Like, it is not there to make you like richer. It's there to get you to take action to kind of derive to make their business model work. Does that make sense? So you need to learn how to filter through noise, right? If you zoom out even more here, it was even steeper. Do you guys see that? Like, I can actually maybe I can't, but right? You can see that he was actually even steeper over here. Do you guys see this right here? Like over here. Do you guys see that right there? This one right here is hard to fucking call. You could probably make it an extension. You could probably make that an extension all the way here. Do you guys see this right here? Ish. Now I want you guys to know we're going to taper emissions just a little bit more. Yeah, so we're going to taper it from 1 to 0.7. I'm saying that again for the second time this stream. And yeah, I think that this one will more clearly kick into an uptrend, or at least get it flat enough to the point where uptrends are more likely. Pyre Phantom will be really easy to do this on. I think Pyre BNB and Pyre AVAX. I want you guys to know this. If Pyre Phantom is in an uptrend, like, I don't know, by Wednesday or something like that, I want you guys to know we're still looking for all 3 charts to be in an uptrend. Does that make sense to you guys? Like, so I want you guys to understand that tapering inflation for one might solve it, but might not solve the other 2. But we're going to make it to the point where we're solving all 3 at the same time. Do you guys understand? Yeah, exactly. And I don't want to. I need to prove that it works on all 3 chains too. Yeah, like I think that it's happening on all 3 chains is also like critical to the whole theoretics of it. Yeah, exactly. 0kx. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and that's okay. That's okay. And by the way, 0kx, the channelers are meant to be on the chain. They're not. I know that right now they're very focused on Phantom because I think Phantom is the chain where it makes most sense to focus. But in the future, in theory, the channeler should be prescribing strategies for all 3 chains. Every epoch, as it were. So again, there can be up to 27 channelers, so we'll get there. Does that make sense? Like right now you have 5, and it's their first week on the job, right? But later on, it'll be 27 of them, and they'll have tons of experience. Make sense? Okay. This is about the 45-minute mark or 47-minute mark. Do you guys have any questions? Yeah, we're just going to taper emissions a little bit more. I'm very bullish. Should I say I'm confident that 0.7 is the right amount, that like will definitely be clearly in an uptrend, because I'm pretty sure that 1% was already good enough. Does that make sense? I think that 1% here, we would end up in an uptrend. So I think I'm going to overcorrect a little bit more to 0.7 and then just hold it at 0.7 until we get to basically the meeting line. So by the way, the meeting line is different for all 3 fucking tokens, is it not? So I guess we'll see what happens. But liquidity is different for each side too. So we'll just play that by ear, and we'll hold it at least at 0.7 for the foreseeable future. And by the way, once meeting happens, you will see surges of inflation. Does that make sense? This is an inflation spike. A meet is an inflation spike. It's an isolated incidence of inflation. Do you guys understand? But it is in fact an inflation spike. So us keeping our inflation to 0.7% daily is probably still good when we get to the meeting line. Worst case scenario, we can always lower it below 0.72 if the other token's not doing as well as Pyre Phantom. Anyways, I think I'll be writing an announcement when we taper the emissions, when I get the confirmation there. And other than that, that's all for today. Any other questions? Fantastic. And thank you to our Twitter for doing such a great job. And thank you to our Discord for always being so bullish. And see you guys tomorrow for Macro Monday. And yeah, have a great rest of your weekend.